Today's special guest on the British Baseball Podcast is a passionate writer, blogger, journalist, and author. He's had work published by The Guardian, BBC Sports, and has been featured by MLB.com, Fanside, Sabre, and the British Baseball Federation. His first book was published in August of 2019 about his beloved Tranmere Rovers, and his new book, Conflict, The Yankees, the Red Sox, and the War for My Heart, has just been published too. Ladies and gentlemen, I give to you Ryan Ferguson. Ryan, how are we doing?
Yeah, not bad. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for joining us. Had a really good read through the extracts that you sent across, some really interesting bits and pieces. How long have you been writing for?
As long as I can remember, really. I think it's one of my real passions in life. It helps me in a lot of different ways. I've been a professional writer, journalist, as you say. But I think just the hobby of it more than anything, the passion, it's something that's helped me in all aspects of my life, really.
Awesome. And in your eyes, what makes a great writer?
I think it's just honesty, really. I think it's just being honest with yourself and, honest with your opinions and your experiences, really. I think having the bravery to put yourself out there a little bit to the whole world, and I think you have to have a thick skin in that respect, especially in this day and age, because I think with writing, I think somebody's always going to sort of, be offended or take a different stance to yourself. It's a very opinionated world out there. So I think, honesty, bravery, and I think just being prepared for, a bit of backlash sometimes. I think that, they're all good aspects of a writer. And I think just writing as well. I think that's the main thing. It's not being too critical of yourself, and it's not being striving for perfection, because you never attain that, really.
Lovely. And as an author, have you ever received any bad advice from other authors?
I think there's I've had the criticism of my style. Certainly sometimes it can be quite wordy, it can be quite dense in some respects, and I think a lot of people have said that it probably wasn't suited to traditional journalism in that respect. Probably more suited to sort of blogging and the fanzine culture in British football, certainly. But I think those type of criticisms, you take it with a pinch of salt, because not everybody knows why you're writing, or what your story is, what your journey is, and you might not be striving for those things. You might be getting sort of something different out of writing, which is can't be measured in sort of money or professional development. So I always sort of I take criticism on board, but I maintain that I write for personal reasons first and foremost. And that's quite important to me.
Yeah. Would you say that you've got your own sort of writing style, or is it similar to any other authors or journalists that are out there?
I think I was influenced a lot by the traditional American baseball writers. From an early age, the first books I ever read were baseball books. For probably the first sort of, from the age of probably 11 to 18, that was the only type of book I read. So I think a lot of the old school sort of newspaper journalists in America, there's a great tradition of sports writing and baseball writing, certainly. And I think reading the work of columnists like Dan Shaughnessy of the Boston Globe, and going back further, to the likes of Roger Kahn, and they had such a grand writing style, such a a use of hyperbole and exaggeration, and I think that a lot of my writing probably echoes some of that sort of style, really. And I think it's just it's probably a nod towards how I discovered the baseball, and how I started experimenting with writing as well.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about in your book is when you talked about how at a young age, when most like kids that are 10, 11 years old start reading Harry Potter and comic books, or even just like playing video games, you were on a train journey some fair distance to go to Waterstone to get a copy of The Road to Redemption by Craig W. Thomas. So, how did you first like? I know we've read it in. I've read it in your extracts, but how did you first get into baseball books?
It was literally as a result of the Channel 5 show back in the day. I think, a lot of British baseball fans of a certain generation, they look towards the Channel 5 show as their gateway drug, so to speak. That was, for us, that was the first access that we had to North American sports and on free-to-air television. And I think the guys on there were always suggesting different titles, different books to chase down and try and get hold of, because it was quite difficult back then to even get hold of a baseball book in Britain. And I think that Roads to Redemption, that was by a British author, Craig W. Thomas. So I think he came on the show at one point and he was interviewed by the guys, and I just remember thinking, right, I've finally got a title to chase down, and I can go and try and get a copy of this book. And it led to just a whole stream of books. Really, I've probably got about 200 or 300 books now, baseball books. I've always got one on the go. And I think more than any other sport, it lends itself really well to great writing. And I think that's that continues every year. There's more new titles coming out, and there's different sort of types of baseball book. And I think it's a whole industry's been built around that, really.
Yeah, you got any favorites?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I think, as I say, there's so many. You got the classics like Moneyball and The Boys of Summer, and some of the more well-known books like Ball 4. But I think that there's some sort of lesser-known books that I've reread so many times. So Faithful by Stephen King, who is obviously one of the most famous writers of all time, really. But he done sort of a diary of the 2004 Red Sox season, and that was just brilliant. That was probably the first book I could never put down. And it's one that just never loses its luster, really, no matter how many times you pick it back up. And I think there's some other books like that. I think the biographies certainly of like the great players like Babe Ruth or Joe DiMaggio, whoever it may be. Some of the quality that's produced in terms of biography as well in baseball is it's stunning, really. There's some real masterpieces out there, and I highly recommend those to people.
So have you ever been moved emotionally by any of these books?
Yeah, I think you always take something from a book, no matter what book it is. I think if it's good or bad, and I think for me and baseball books, the major thing that I always took away from it was that voice, really, that self-discovery of learning new words and building your vocabulary up and stuff like that. So I think it's always a journey. Certainly when you're reading about baseball from Britain, I think it moves you to another time and another place, and sometimes it helps you escape your surroundings, which might not be ideal, and it's that bit of escapism that I think we all need from time to time.
Yeah, indeed. So when you first started to write, did you like for like a school paper, or did you do anything for like colleges? When did you start to pick up speed with your own literature?
I think I'd done a lot of blogging, probably starting around 2008, 2009. I remember, I just used to publish blogs. I used to I'd even just write in Word documents and not even publish things. I just, for me, it was just a case of enjoying the art, really. And I think, one of my school teachers, Mr. Robinson, was a big sort of, he was a big inspiration for me and a big mentor in that respect. Because I was brought up on a council estate in Wirral, and the school wasn't the best, and I probably could have went down one or two tracks, really, and got in with the wrong crowd or whatever it may be. And I think that teacher was, that he revealed the power of writing to me really, and encouraged me to follow that path. And it wasn't always the coolest thing in the playground, to be a writer and reading, and sometimes you have to overcome that. And I think it's always been I'm always reminded of that influence of my English teachers. And I remember I went back after I published my first book. I managed to go back to the school and give a speech on an awards evening and stuff like that. So that was pleasing to give something back to those guys as well.
That's amazing. So what advice did you give to those kids in the audience, or any young writers?
Well, I think it's just all about perseverance, really. I think I think a lot of people sometimes, if you say you want to be a writer, that's one thing, but actually writing is quite another thing. So I think if you want to be a writer, the thing is just to sit there in the chair and just literally start typing. It might not be the best at first. It probably won't be. Even established writers have bad days. They have periods where they can't create stuff. Writer's block, whatever they may struggle with. And I think just making sure you try and get in a routine of writing as regularly as possible. I think naturally, your style and your confidence grows with repetition. And I think reading as well. Reading helps massively in honing your voice and your opinions, and it gives you sort of ammunition to experiment in your own work. So I just think just trying and trying different things. Don't turn down any opportunities to blog or guest blog or whatever it may be, and just try everything to get your name out there, really.
Yeah, great advice. So if you could give any advice to younger self now, what would you say?
I think probably just not to care so much about other people's opinions, really. I think one of the themes in the book is how I, for a long time, felt quite isolated and alienated as a North American sports fan in the UK, certainly. And I think that it wasn't, like I say, it wasn't really cool to like baseball. Nobody had really heard of it. It wasn't especially popular. And it was always seen as a bit weird, really, if I'm honest, around where I grew up. But I think staying true to yourself and not being afraid to just live your own truth. I think it's huge. I think it's something that comes with maturity, really, over time. I think we grow into who we are, and I think we become less sort of inclined to pander to other people's opinions and change ourselves to conform. So I think that's the big thing, is just be yourself, and don't worry too much about other people's opinions.
Yeah, lovely. You mentioned, we mentioned at the start of the show that you'd done some work for the British Baseball Federation. How did that start?
I think I was about 18 in sort of 2012, it would have been. And I always knew that I wanted to be a baseball writer. I remember sort of at school, we'd do essays about what future job we wanted, and mine was always the most absurd, really. I wanted to be a professional baseball writer, based in Bromber in Wirral. It wasn't the most common sort of obsession, but I wanted to imitate those heroes of, like I say, of the newspaper tradition, especially. And I tried everything to get voluntary opportunities, to just cut my teeth, really, anywhere that I could, get my name out there. And I think that sort of led me to the British Baseball Federation, which I think I covered the AA North Division in 2012. So I think they paid me about £50 for the whole season, and I was made up with that. I just didn't know that you could make money from writing. I was just made up, and it was a baptism of fire in some respects, covering covering the game as quite a raw teenager. And I remember I had to ring up all of the team managers each Sunday night after their games, and try and get the results and the match reports. And it could be difficult stitching all that information together. And if you missed calls or guys didn't pick up, it was it was quite difficult, but it was always entertaining, and I think it gave me a good grounding for the rest of my sort of writing career, really.
Yeah. Who are some of your favourite people to speak to? You say you're speaking to the managers.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that there was a lot of teams that are covered. Obviously, that stick out. So I think the Bolton Robots of Doom. So I think they've got one of the best names in sports history, really. I think it was always fun talking to those guys, and closer to home, the Liverpool Trojans guys. They've always been really supportive of my work.
Yeah.
They've got a great tradition there as well.
Yeah, they have. Yeah.
So it was just interesting to see these guys who dedicated so much time to such a nuanced game, and such a game that didn't really get much attention. A lot of people wouldn't even know that up and down the country every weekend there was baseball going on. It sort of just happened in the anonymously almost, and it was a great thrill to sort of bring that to the mainstream a little bit, and shed some light on those stories, really.
Yeah, definitely. Did you get to see any of the games played live?
I went to a couple of Liverpool Trojan games, and I trained with those guys for a bit as well. I think I mentioned that in the book. Obviously, I've moved to Liverpool recently, and I went along for a few training sessions just for just a bit of fun, really, a bit of trying to keep fit. But I wasn't very good, to say the least. So it just sort of petered out. But I think I'll stick to the writing.
So you're not going to come out of retirement then?
Well, I might do. I might make a comeback, like one of the movies. Get myself in training for spring training. I think just
Sure.
get the arm going.
I'm sure they're working on it. I know a few of the people from the show, and they are, like you said, there's great tradition, great sell. They've got some brilliant people that are there. Same to be said across a lot of the clubs that I've spoken to, top people involved. I'm sure that if you went down there, they'd love to have you on board. So let's talk about your book and your baseball journey. One of the questions that I ask a lot of people is, what does baseball mean to you? And from reading the extracts in your book, I think it's a real question to ask you as well.
Baseball to me, it's been a really important part of my life. I think I'm quite introverted. I've always been quite introverted, and quite a shy person as well. For a lot of time, I've struggled with anxiety, and different sort of mental health conditions as well. And I think baseball has always been, it's been a go-to sort of outlet for me. It's been like my private sort of obsession, really. And I think whilst a lot of people, are obsessed with football in this country, or rugby, more popular sports, and I love those sports as well. Don't get me wrong, but I think baseball was my equivalent of reading a good book, in terms of it was my passport to something else, something quite unique that nobody else was really into. And it was sort of a place where I was allowed to be free, and free to develop my own interest, my own way of following the game, without having to conform to whether it be the aggression of football fandom, or the tribal nature of sport in Britain a lot of the time. I think that baseball is a sport that matches our life. It's a great metaphor for life in many ways. The fact that they play so many games day in, day out, and the triumphs and tribulations that you go through following a team. I think it's something that's it's like a companion more than a sport in some respects, and it's great if you feel sort of alienated, or you feel slightly you know, out of place really with mainstream society. I think baseball's a place where it's very welcoming to a broad church of people, whereas some other sports may be quite insular in their outlook sometimes. And that's something I've always enjoyed. And there's a timeless sort of nature to the game where you can dip in and out without too much commitment really. And I think that lends itself well to enjoyment rather than obsession.
Yeah. We talked before about mental health. Do you find that writing helps with your mental health situations, or did writing this particular book help you with any sort of situations?
Yeah, definitely. So I've wrote quite extensively about my mental health journey. So I struggle with depression, generalized anxiety disorder, and OCD as well. So it's quite a it's quite a difficult mix of disorders really to deal with on a daily basis. But I find that writing has always been my kind of therapy. I know that certain more conventional forms of therapy tend to work for people, but I've tried those, and I think we all find our own ways of dealing with life. Sometimes I think my way of dealing with problems is to articulate them and try and get them down on paper and try and work through and send some logic in what I'm feeling, what I'm experiencing at any given time. And I think the outlet of writing a book is it's brilliant really. I would get up writing this book. I'd get up at 6 a.m. before work, and just those couple of hours writing that 500 words, 1,000 words a day, something like that. Those couple of hours were crucial in setting me up for a good day. And it was just some kind of calm in the sort of confusing whirlwind of life sometimes. And it's that retreat that we all need in various forms. And I think it's one of the healthiest ways you can certainly divert your attention anyway. And I've found great relief in writing, and I'd definitely recommend it to people, whether it be even just keeping a journal or writing down your thoughts at the end of a day, or things you're grateful for. Even that's sometimes useful. It doesn't have to be you don't have to publish a book, you don't have to start a blog. It can just be for your own personal sort of sanity really. But it's something that I'd definitely recommend to anyone struggling with mental ill health, or a difficult time in their life.
Yeah. Would you write on any day, or did you find that you just want to write when you were feeling at your best, or did you just write regardless of how the day had been?
Well, it's difficult really, because I do struggle with routines and schedules sometimes. As I say, with OCD, I think the classic connotation of OCD is that people will sort of turn the light switch off 10 times before they go to bed, or they'll have all the labels perfectly sort of aligned in the cupboard. But there's another side to OCD that doesn't really get as much exposure, in terms of the obsessive thoughts and the it's like a surplus of ideas, and your mind constantly whirring with ideas. And I think I can quickly fall down a rabbit hole with any project or idea or plan. So it can quickly become, very sort of overpowering, and it can take over my whole life. So I have to be very careful and set boundaries with anything really. So it's the same with the writing. There are days where you really don't feel like it, or you can't fit it into a busy schedule. Life goes on, and sometimes you don't find that time. And I think the key thing is not to beat yourself up. And I think we see now on social media, there's so much pressure to produce and constantly grind things out and produce such a high volume all the time. And I think sometimes we just need to take a step back and just realize that, if I don't manage to write today, then that's fine. Let's just call it a day and try again tomorrow. It's that's a process that we all have to learn. I think, especially if you struggle with OCD. But I think I'm gradually getting better at that. Certainly.
Yeah, that's interesting. You should say that, because I think when I started off in my actual proper job in analytics and becoming a parent, like I said, my thoughts spiral out of control. Like I often get lost in my own train of thought, and I can sit there thinking I've spoken, but I've not. I've just been quiet because I've just played out scenarios, and it drives me mad. Because I'm my own worst enemy. I can't seem to let go. So I've been speaking to people to try and get help about that, and also I found meditation and other things have helped me with it too. But yeah, it's probably nothing like what you've gone through. But what you said there, I completely get it. Completely get it. It can be a scary path sometimes. So let's go back to your book. It's about your love of the Red Sox and how you became a Yankees fan, which might sound very strange to most, because if it was football in this country, if you were an Arsenal fan and started supporting Spurs, or if you're Manchester United and started Man City, or as what happened with yourself, it would be a Liverpool sort of situation, Liverpool and Everton, you probably wouldn't be allowed back in your own home. So how did you become a Red Sox fan to start with? Was it the books?
It was literally the Channel 5. So it literally starts with football, as most things do in Britain. I think I used to watch the old Channel 5 sports. So they had a lot of different sports leagues back in the day. So they had Dutch football, Argentinian football, and I used to stay awake and watch, all of those games. We couldn't afford the premium subscriptions to like Sky Sports and stuff like that. So I just took every advantage to watch any football I could find, really. And it meant staying awake after midnight, then so be it. Even as like a 10, 11-year-old, I'd stay awake and watch like Boca Juniors games. And it's just like so random, but I loved it. And I think one day I was probably waiting for a Dutch game to come on 5, and one night, and it just never materialized because there was a baseball documentary on in 2004. It was the documentary was about the Red Sox, obviously winning the World Series that year, ending their sort of drought, the championship drought of 86 years. And at first I was quite annoyed. Like I was just waiting for the footy, and they had this random sport on. I didn't know anything about it. I'd never heard of any of the teams. But I just got pulled in by this film that was on, and the storylines, and the characters that were in it, playing for this team that had such loyal fans, despite never winning. And it was I sort of associated with the Red Sox from there, really. And like you say, the books sort of turbocharged that passion. Read a lot of the Boston sort of newspaper guys, a lot of the Red Sox books, 2004 especially. And then obviously the Red Sox won the World Series in 2007, which was probably the first sporting success that I ever sort of felt, really, as a Tranmere Rovers fan. We don't tend to experience success very often, so that was a brilliant era, really. And then things got a bit complicated.
Yeah, that's an understatement. The book was really interesting about how you just described how the turn of events came from you falling out of it. Because the one thing that I noticed is that throughout your youth, all the way through adolescence as well, you just invested so much time and effort and energy and yourself into Boston. I mean, what went wrong to sort of make you flip codes?
So literally, again, it was football, and I mentioned Tranmere Rovers. So if listeners aren't familiar with Tranmere, which you probably aren't, let's face it, Basically, Tranmere is a club from Birkenhead, which is 10 minutes through the Mersey Tunnel from Liverpool. And Tranmere is a lower division club far away from the Premier League sort of glitz and glamour. And I sort of grew up as in a long tradition of Tranmere fans. And there's not many of us, so we could probably count them all, to be fair. But I it's something that's very special to me. It's my identity from birth. It's my hometown. It's my my values, my morals. It's going the game with my dad, my brothers. It's something very special. It's very centered. It's my worldview, really. And part of being a Tranmere fan and the tribal nature of football, as we've mentioned, is it's hating Liverpool essentially, Liverpool FC. So there's a direct link between the growth and success of Liverpool and the demise and the subjugation of Tranmere, really. And I think over time, in school, I was the only Tranmere fan, and this is Wirral is a place that's got a population of 330,000 people, and you would therefore think that Tranmere Rovers would have sort of a massive fan base and capable of sustaining the Premier League. But the problem is that only 5,000-6,000 people go to the games, because a lot of people go and support Liverpool and Everton just for the glory and for the that association with Premier League football. And that always sort of rankled with me. And I got into a lot of scraps at school over it, certainly. I was always sort of teasing people whenever Liverpool lost, and I'd get it in the neck whenever Tranmere inevitably got relegated. But basically, in 2010, my world was sort of rocked essentially when the Red Sox owners, so John Henry and Tom Werner, they purchased Liverpool FC. And for me, that was so difficult to reconcile in my own head. It was like, I think I was 16 at the time, so it was probably quite an immature sort of period in my life. But I thought that if I bought a Red Sox hat or cap, or just even rooted for them or wish them success, I think I thought that that money, that goodwill would sort of trickle through to Liverpool, and it would essentially sort of undermine my whole identity, really, by making Liverpool this great force. And I think that was too much for me to bear in some respects. And my Red Sox fandom just it was curtailed pretty quickly, really. And it was a decision that I think baseball became my favorite sport, but the allegiance to Tranmere belonged to even a higher echelon, really. That was sort of the overriding force in my life, and that sort of led me to act, really.
Yeah. So was it a case of going straight to the Yankees as revenge? So like if your girlfriend had cheated on you, try and go out with her sister, sort of thing? Or did you experiment with other clubs before settling on the Yankees?
No, I did. I wandered through the wilderness for a few years, certainly. I became more of, for a while, I thought that, I conflated the loss of sort of the Red Sox with the loss of my own sort of interest in baseball generally for a while. But then, I gradually started watching games. I enjoyed different teams. As I mentioned in the book, I'd dip in and out of different teams. Whether you'd be drawn in by a particular player, or a ballpark, or a uniform, and it was a fun time in some respects. To actually delve into some of these clubs and get to know them and how they worked and what made them tick. But I think after a while, once I started writing about the game professionally, it became apparent pretty quick that I couldn't really have allegiances. I had to be quite objective and obviously report on the game in a fair manner. And my interest in rooting for any particular team sort of waned for a bit, until I had a great experience with the Yankees, which sort of kicked off that whole sort of episode.
Yeah, do you want to tell us about that? Because I thought it was really cool, actually. As someone that I'm not a Yankees fan, to the point where I actually took the mick out of one of my guests for being a Yankees fan with a parental advisory warning. Chris, I'm looking at you. If he runs the Empire Strikes Back podcast, which is the UK's Yankees podcast there. So yeah, it is really cool. So do you want to share it?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was a baseball journalist, basically I was researching for an article in 2013. So um, the Yankees entered a partnership with Manchester City, um, and they partnered to form a MLS franchise, so New York City FC. City owns 80%, the Yankees own 20%, and the team plays in Yankee Stadium. Um, and I was really keen to just investigate this meant for British baseball and the community here. And I was keen to campaign for some kind of mutuality in the relationship. If they were forming a football club in New York, I thought, well, why can't they form a baseball club in England, and why can't we spread the game here with workshops or training days, whatever it may be. So, I started researching this article, and I reached out to the Yankees just for hoping to get a quote from them or some insight into what they were trying to get out of the collaboration. I wasn't expecting much of a reply, really. But I actually got a response from Christina Campana, who was part of the guest relations team at the Yankees, and she said that essentially, she would pass on my query to the different teams and try and chase that up for me. But she also said that my sort of email had caused quite a stir in the team's offices. And she said that the Yankees wanted to basically send me sort of a fan package, which as a journalist I was immediately sort of, it was a red flag, because I didn't want those allegiances, if I could help it. But intrigue sort of won out in the end, and I was, I think one of the big things as a British fan of North American sports is how we have to manufacture sort of connections to the teams that exist so far away, really. We don't always have sort of a family tradition to follow, or there's not a local club to go and watch. So when one of the major league teams comes forward and tries to establish a bond with you, no matter how sort of vague or PR, how it might be a PR spin or whatever, it was intriguing. So the Yankees ended up sending across a parcel with a cap, a jersey, the full works, really. And there was like a personalized letter in there on Yankees letterhead, and it really pulled me in. And I never really looked back. I knew I was in trouble at that point. And then I started obviously watching, more Yankees games, watching Derek Jeter's final season, which was brilliant. And from there, really, it's just developed naturally, obviously. And then watching the Yankees in London in 2019 was the capper, really, and that was just such a brilliant experience.
Yeah, did you go down for both games?
Yeah, it did. It was great. I managed to get to the workout day as well on the Friday, which was
Yeah.
fantastic. And just I've never actually been to America, even to this day, which is it's quite bizarre, really, when you think about it. So to finally see, the first game in London was it was such a special experience.
Cool. What are your favourite memories from that weekend?
I think I managed to catch a foul ball, and I got it signed by Mark Teixeira, who was a great Yankees player. He was doing sort of TV duties on the side of the field, and I managed to nab him as he was coming off, and he signed the ball for me. So that was like my first signed ball. It's always a proud moment, and I think there's just loads of little vignettes from the weekend. So when the anthems were playing in the stadium was full, such an emotional moment for everyone who had campaigned for years to see these games. That was special, and I think just seeing the interaction between the Yankees and the London Mets. So they did a great sort of outreach day there, donated a load of equipment. It was special to see the bond that baseball players have with fans and the connection between fans are so much closer to the field, and you get great access for autographs or whatever it may be, whereas in football here increasingly you're shepherded in and out of the ground as quickly as possible a lot of the time. And I think it was a whole different experience. It was a lot more laid back. It was more of a day out, and it was a great vibe there. And I hope that we manage to get games back in future.
Yeah, hopefully. I didn't manage to get down there. I just went to the Manchester Baseball Club to watch it down there with a little one, and we had a great time. Great time.
Yeah,
And it's probably because of that moment that I am where I am today. I've mentioned it a few times on the podcast. Just the characters down there, the friendliness, the welcoming vibe, and just the acceptance. Brilliant people. Love them. Miss them a lot as well. Hopefully we can get training back soon and we can all shout at each other from across the field. That's just looking a bit of a while off. What do you think makes your book so unique compared to the baseball books?
I think definitely the perspective that I write from. So obviously there's not many British baseball writers who are published, and I think even within Britain, I think my voice is quite unique. So it's not just Britain; it's like the northern sort of council estate. Look at things. It's not like even going to London for me was a it was a experience. I've been a few times watching Tranmere games, but you feel like you're in a foreign country sometimes, even in London. It's such a bustling, cosmopolitan place, and I think that the whole weekend was so special in that regard. So I think definitely the perspective from which I write is unique, and I think the way that the book does a lot of different things. So it's part memoir, it's part history, and it's part sort of fly on the wall of life as a baseball fan in Britain. So I think it's quite ambitious in what it tries to achieve, and I'm proud of the outcome, really.
Lovely. Which bits of the book did you enjoy revisiting when you were writing it?
I actually, so years ago in sort of 2008, I think I mentioned I used to sort of type into Word documents, and I had a vision when I was probably 13, 14 to write a baseball book. And I kept sort of a diary of the Red Sox season in 2008, and my idea at the time was to try and get it published. Which was, looking back, it's sort of so naive, but it was an important step in my development, writing every day and finding my voice. And and I actually enjoyed reading that manuscript again just to jog my memory. And I managed to include a few extracts from that actual diary, which is pretty special for me, to finally get those published as part of this wider project. So definitely, looking back, the 2000 sort of 6, 7, 8 seasons, that's when my passion was probably at its peak. It was such a great time, and such a different era, really, in many respects. So looking back was brilliant.
Yeah, great stuff. So another question for you: who plays you in the movie adaptation of your book?
I think we'd all like to say Brad Pitt, wouldn't we? Or Leonardo DiCaprio, maybe. I think I'd probably go with someone like Matt Damon or someone like that. A proper baseball fan, and I'd love to see Matt Damon with a Yankees cap on as well. That'd
Oh, do you
be
think he'd do it, or do you
quite.
think he'd get a body double in?
He definitely wouldn't do it. It'd be brilliant.
Yeah. So what's next in the pipeline?
I'm just enjoying writing really. I think the baseball season coming up, it gives me a chance to write about the Yankees in the shortened season. It's going to be a season like any other really. I've got my own little Yankees blog, which is Pinstripe Galaxy, where I hope to sort of cover the team in as much detail as possible really. So I'm just looking forward to sharing those experiences and meeting new people, meeting new Yankees fans, and just continuing to enjoy the game. Really, not taking things too seriously. In terms of the writing, I'll probably look to start my third book soon, which is quite exciting. Probably gonna try and do something around mental health, which is something that I'm really keen to do.
Yeah, yeah, and I think when you read the book, you'll find out exactly how big a role it's played in your life and how important it is to you. Where can we find the book?
So it's available on Amazon now in paperback and ebook formats. Just search Ryan Ferguson on Amazon or Conflict. Alternatively, you might be able to get it easier on my website, which is ryanferguson.co.uk, and on Twitter as well, which is Ryan Ferguson HQ. You'll find all the links there. So if you feel like checking that out, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I'll make sure I put the links within the show notes too. And as we draw to a close, it's tradition for me to leave the last words to the guests. So if there's any parting advice, any shout outs or anything you want to touch on before we go?
No, I just think the British baseball community. I think I just want to say a big thank you, really, to all the guys who have supported me over the years. So, there's so many unsung heroes that make up the British baseball community, and a lot of people that do a lot of good work without much recognition, and certainly without any financial reward. There's a lot of people that like guys like Josh Chetwin, Johnny Gould, Dave Lengel back in the day, Eric Jansen. Even just nowadays, that the bloggers, the podcasters, the guys who just continue, the fire really, and they pass the torch from one generation to the next. And I think, I think sometimes it can be difficult because it seems like you're not getting much traction, or the community is quite small, but it's growing all the time. And I think if people knew the impact that they have, certainly sort of behind closed doors, it's a real inspiration. So I think the key thing is just to keep on pressing home that momentum and keep building that community, and supporting one another. Really, I think there's great things ahead for British baseball, and I can't wait to be part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, you mentioned as well then about Josh. You wrote, did you have some contact with Josh? Did he give you some advice?
Yeah, definitely. So Josh has always been a huge supporter of my work over the years. So he's the guy who basically taught me much of what I know about baseball. Through the show, just the level of knowledge he has about the game is just it's unprecedented. I think on either side of the Atlantic, it's just like his knowledge is unbelievable. And I think I managed to get some advice from Josh over a number of years. And in 2013, we shared the British Baseball Writing Award, which was like a writing competition. So Josh and I basically shared the prize, which was a huge moment for me. Managed to get published by Sabre off the back of that, which was fantastic. So yeah, Josh has always played a huge part in my career. I got to meet him in London for the first time. and being able to send a copy of the book to him was, it was brilliant for me to give something back. So yeah, can't thank him enough, really.
Yeah, it's a top guy. I've had a few interactions with him on social medias, and is a absolute legend of the game and a proper gent. Yeah, a lot of time for him.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, Ryan. Really appreciate it. And good luck with your book. Any tours that you're going to be doing?
No, it's quite difficult, isn't it, with the pandemic at the moment? I think trying to get on a few podcasts here and there. Guys have been really welcoming, which is brilliant. In the British baseball community, I appreciate this opportunity as well to come on. So it's fantastic. I've been a loyal listener, so it's great to it's great to finally get on, and I think it's just see how far we can take things really with the book.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Well, I wish you all the best of luck with it. Keep in touch and let us know how you get on. And I'm sure when Bolton and Tranmere have their top of the table clash in Division 2, when it all kicks off again, we'll have a little bit of banter back and forth.
Absolutely, yeah, that's it. Can't wait.
You know it. All right, Ryan, take care. Have a lovely evening, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
All right.